All right, now that we've gone over Boolean and a few extra concepts related to primitives, I want you to go ahead and code along with me on this one to play around with those concepts. Okay, so creating Booleans. Here you can see how I declared a Boolean, called it bool1, and set it equal to true. And then if I run it, I get that it will print out true. It's also possible to read in your own Boolean value. So I can use my scanner, and I can actually ask for my next Boolean. And if we try this, we see it's waiting for me to type one in. Now you'll notice here, if I type in 55, I get an error, right? It didn't like that. So you need to be very careful with this, where when you have a program that's accepting a Boolean, the only thing the person can type in, right? If they type in giraffe, it's going to cause an error. So you better make sure that when you are asking for a Boolean, that the person does in fact type in a Boolean, and then they'll actually print that out. All right, so the other thing I mentioned in the video was this idea of domain, right? The possible values. Booleans, it's pretty straightforward. You got true and false. For integers, I wanted to demonstrate this concept of min and max value. Okay, so let's say I create an int and I call it max, and I'm going to set this, instead of to a scanned in value, let's set it equal to our max value constant. Okay, now I'm going to print this out so we can have a look at it. I run this code, and you see that that is in fact the maximum value. So what's interesting about this is, what if we decided to add 10 to the maximum value and then print it out? Well, this should cause an error. But instead what happens is we actually get a huge negative number. So you can probably figure out what happened here. This is called overflow, where we actually added onto our max value and it went and wrapped around to the other side, to the integer.min value, and started counting upward from there, right? Because the way that the binary addition happens in Java, the binary digits actually flipped over, and because they're represented using something called 2's complement, and we got a really large negative number. So you really want to be careful when you're using these max values and min values, right? When you're working in that upper and lower bound, you have to be careful about how you do your mathematical operations. Okay, and then the last thing to show was, remember, you can create a final. Let's say we actually wanted to create a final double this time. We'll call it pi, right? Because maybe you don't ever want the value of pi to change from 3.14. And then here you can see if I said, well, I want pi actually to equal 3.14159. Then I try to print it out. I run my code. I get an error, right? Because you're not supposed to reassign a final variable, and it won't let you do that. It's never going to let anyone change that final variable, but I can print it out because that doesn't change anything. All right, at this point, you have all the skills you need to try on the coding activities yourself. Refer back to these videos or the lesson summary if you need help, and good luck. In today's lesson, you learned about the 3 primitive data types that you need to know in AP Computer Science A. That's the int, the double, and the Boolean. We also learned about how there are reference data types like string, and then there are primitive data types like the 3 that you saw in this lesson. We're going to continue to talk about the difference between those 2 categories of data type, because it comes up over and over again throughout this class. Now, you also learned in this unit how when you are using a scanner, if you're not reading in string information, you need to tell the scanner exactly which data type you're reading in. If you're reading in an int, you need to use the next int method. If you're reading in a double, you need to use the next double method. This is because, again, data types in Java are very important. It tells Java exactly how much memory to use for that particular variable. So to help solidify your knowledge of data types, coming up right after this, there's going to be a short animated video that's narrated by Mrs. Dovey. Enjoy.